Welcome back to the darkness. Tonight, we are traveling to a city known for its music, its lights, and its vibrance. But beneath the surface of the Colorado River, something is waiting. Something that has claimed too many young men, leaving behind only silence and water in their lungs. Is it a coincidence? Or is it the work of a serial killer hiding in plain sight? Lock your doors, turn off the lights, and let the confession begin. It started like any other Friday night in Austin. The air was thick with the scent of barbecue smoke and the electric hum of live music drifting from the open doors of the bars on Rainey Street. To the outside world, this place is a paradise of youth and celebration. A place where the drinks flow heavy and the laughter never dies. But for Jason, this night was supposed to be a beginning, not an end. Jason was 25, young, ambitious, and full of that invincible energy that only comes when you land your dream job. He had just moved to the city 2 weeks prior. His apartment boxes were still unpacked, sitting in the corner of a room he would never see again. He met his friends at a popular spot near the trailhead. The music was loud, thumping against his chest like a second heartbeat. They toasted to his future, to the promotions, to the girls across the bar, to life itself. As the hours bled into the early morning, the crowd began to thin. The neon signs buzzed with a dying light, casting long, distorted shadows against the pavement. Jason told his friends he was just going to grab a ride share. He pulled out his phone, the screen illuminating his face in a ghostly blue glow. "I'll see you guys tomorrow," he said, a promise that would hang in the air like a ghost for years to come. He walked away from the safety of the lights, heading toward the trail that runs parallel to Lady Bird Lake. It is a beautiful path by day, filled with joggers and dogs, but at 2 a.m., it transforms. The trees lean in closer, the shadows stretch out like grasping fingers, and the water is black and silent. CCTV footage caught him one last time. He wasn't stumbling drunk. He was walking with purpose until he reached a blind spot near the water's edge. And then he simply ceased to exist. There was no scream, no splash heard by the passers-by, just a sudden, terrifying absence. His friends called him the next morning, straight to voicemail. Then the next day, and the next. Panic set in slowly, like a freezing cold. The police were called. Missing person posters were stapled to telephone poles, flapping helplessly in the wind. "Have you seen Jason?" they asked. But the city remained silent. It wasn't until 4 days later that the lake gave him back. A kayaker, out for an early morning paddle, saw something bobbing in the reeds near the shore. At first, they thought it was a mannequin or a bundle of trash, until they saw the watch on the wrist, still ticking, counting the seconds of a life that had already stopped. The police arrived, the divers went in, and they pulled Jason from the cold embrace of the water. His skin was pale, his eyes wide open, staring at a sky he could no longer see. The coroner would later say it was an accidental drowning, that he must have slipped, fell, and couldn't get out. But Jason was a swimmer, a strong swimmer, and the bank where he was found, it wasn't steep. His mother screamed when she heard the news, a sound that shattered the peace of the suburbs. She didn't believe it was an accident. Mothers never do. They know the rhythm of their children's hearts. She knew, deep down in her bones, that her son didn't just fall. He was taken, and he was only the first. In the months that followed, another young man would vanish from the same street, under the same circumstances, found in the same water. The pattern was beginning to form, a pattern written in water and blood, and the city was about to wake up to a nightmare it couldn't explain. The water was whispering, and it was hungry for more. The silence of a morgue is heavier than any other silence on earth. It is a vacuum where the noise of the living world comes to die, replaced by the hum of refrigeration units and the scratch of a scalpel on bone. Jason lay on the stainless steel table, stripped of his name, his dreams, and his warmth. He was now just case number 409, a puzzle of flesh and fluid waiting to be solved. The medical examiner, Dr. Harrison, had seen 1,000 drownings before. Usually, they were tragic but simple. A swimmer cramps up, a boat capsizes, a drunk stumbles off a pier. The lungs fill with water, the diaphragm spasms, and the darkness takes over. But as Dr. Harrison began his work on Jason, something felt wrong. He started with the external examination. The body showed signs of prolonged submersion. The skin was wrinkled. Washerwoman's hands, they call it. But there were no defensive wounds. No scrapes on the knuckles from fighting back. No bruising on the arms from being grabbed. It was as if Jason had walked into the water willingly. Or he was entirely unable to move when he went in. Dr. Harrison made the Y incision, the sound of the skin parting echoing in the tiled room. He examined the lungs. They were heavy, sodden, filled with the murky water of Lady Bird Lake. This confirmed the cause of death was drowning, but it didn't explain the manner of death. Then came the toxicology report. This is where the story usually ends for the police. Alcohol present, intoxicated, accidental, and yes, Jason had alcohol in his system, enough to be buzzed, maybe even drunk, but not enough to be incapacitated. Not enough to make a 25-year-old athlete forget how to swim. But there was something else. A trace. A ghostly chemical signature that shouldn't have been there. In some of the subsequent cases that would follow Jason, whispers began to circulate about GHB, gamma hydroxybutyrate, the date rape drug. Tasteless, odorless, and terrifyingly effective. It acts as a central nervous system depressant. It turns the legs to rubber, the mind to fog, and the will to fight into absolute zero. If Jason had been slipped something in his final drink back on Rainey Street, he wouldn't have been stumbling because he was drunk. He would have been stumbling because his body was shutting down. He would have been conscious, trapped inside a paralyzed shell, watching the ground approach, watching the water rise, unable to scream. Dr. Harrison looked at Jason's eyes. Even in death, eyes can tell a story. Hemorrhages in the sclera can indicate strangulation or intense pressure. But Jason's eyes, they were wide. The muscles around them were taut. It is a look known as cadaveric spasm in rare cases where the muscles lock in the exact moment of death due to extreme emotional trauma. It suggests that in his final second, Jason wasn't just drowning. He was terrified. Why would an accidental fall cause such primal terror? If you fall, you panic. You flail, you fight. But this looked like he saw something. Something in the water, or something standing on the shore, watching him go under. The report was typed up. Accidental drowning was the official verdict stamped in red ink. The GHB levels were deemed inconclusive due to the decomposition and the body's natural production of certain chemicals after death. It was a convenient explanation, a neat bow on a messy package. But Dr. Harrison couldn't shake the feeling as he zipped the body bag closed. The water in the lungs was from the lake. but the fear in the eyes, that came from something else entirely. And as he turned off the lights in the morgue that night, leaving Jason in the cold dark, he wondered if he would be seeing another young man from Rainey Street soon. He didn't have to wait long to find out. When one person drowns, it's a tragedy. When 2 drown in the same spot, it's a coincidence. When 10 drown, it's a pattern that screams to be heard. As the bodies began to mount in Austin, the whispers on the internet grew from a murmur into a roar. People weren't just looking at Texas anymore. They were looking everywhere. And what they found was a terrifying tapestry woven across the country, and perhaps the world. It began decades ago, far from the neon lights of Rainey Street, in the American Midwest. New York, Boston, Chicago. Young men, almost exclusively college-aged, athletic, intelligent, would go out for a night of drinking with friends. They would get separated from their group, and days or weeks later, they would be found floating in a nearby river or lake. The police in every city said the same thing: accidental drowning due to alcohol intoxication. They walked away to urinate, fell in, and couldn't get out. It became a mantra, a shield to protect the public from a darker possibility. But then, 2 retired detectives in New York, Kevin Gannon and Anthony Duarte, refused to accept the mantra. They looked closer at the cases that the system had closed, and they found something that made their blood run cold. In case after case, near the location where the body entered the water or where it was found, they discovered graffiti. Not just any graffiti, a symbol, a crude, painted smiley face. Sometimes it was bright yellow, sometimes it was blood red, sometimes just a black scrawl on a bridge abutment. It seemed to be a signature, a mocking wink left behind by the perpetrators. Gannon and Duarte proposed a theory that was so horrifying, many dismissed it as pure fiction. They believed there was a network, a loose coalition of serial killers operating across state lines, sharing methods, maybe even competing with each other. They called them the Smiley Face Killers. Their theory was that these young men were being targeted, stalked in bars, drugged with substances like GHB to make them compliant, then abducted. They weren't just falling into the water, they were being put there, held under until the life bubbled out of them, then released to flow downstream. The detectives pointed to inconsistencies in the autopsies. Bodies that showed signs of being in the water for only 2 days, when the victim had been missing for 10. Where were they for those missing 8 days? Were they held somewhere? Tortured? Kept alive until the killer was ready to dispose of them? The FBI and major police departments publicly debunked the theory. They claimed the smiley faces were just common graffiti, that the drowning statistics were normal for cities with waterways and vibrant nightlife. They called it a moral panic. But then, Austin happened. As the young men of Rainey Street started disappearing, the internet sleuths dusted off the old theory. They started looking at bridges near Lady Bird Lake, searching the concrete pylons and the shadowed underpasses. And in the forums, pictures began to circulate. A spray-painted grin found near the trailhead, a faded yellow circle on a wall near the water's edge. Was it just copycat graffiti from teenagers wanting to scare people? Or had the network, if it ever existed, moved south? Had they found a new hunting ground in the thriving heart of Texas? The families of the victims clung to the theory like a lifeline. It gave them a reason, a villain, something to fight against other than the senseless cruelty of an accident. because the alternative was to believe that their sons, their bright, capable sons, had simply walked into the dark and died for no reason at all. And that was the hardest thing of all to accept. The dots were there, waiting to be connected, but would anyone in power dare to draw the line? They say dead men tell no tales, but what about the ones who almost died? The ones who walked up to the edge of the abyss, looked down, and somehow, by the grace of God or luck, stepped back. Meet Chris. Chris doesn't go to Rainey Street anymore. He doesn't go near the water at night. In fact, Chris sleeps with the lights on now, because Chris remembers the night the fog tried to take him. It was a Tuesday, a slow night. He was out with two buddies for a quick beer after a long shift. He remembers ordering his second drink. He remembers the bartender sliding it across the polished wood. He remembers taking the first sip, and then nothing. Not the blackout drunk kind of nothing. This was different. He describes it like a sudden, heavy curtain dropping over his mind. 1 minute he was laughing at a joke. The next, the room was spinning. The voices of his friends sounded like they were underwater, distorted and slow. He remembers standing up. "I need fresh air," he mumbled. His legs felt like they didn't belong to him. Heavy wouldn't. He stumbled out the back door, away from the crowd, away from safety. His memory of the next hour is a series of terrifying, disjointed flashes. Flash, he is walking down a dirt path. Flash, the smell of wet earth and rotting leaves. Flash, the sound of water lapping against stone. He wasn't walking toward his car. He wasn't walking toward the bus stop. He was walking straight toward Lady Bird Lake. And the terrifying part, he didn't know why. He felt a pull, a magnetic urge to just keep walking. He recalls a moment of clarity, a split second where the fog lifted just enough for him to realize he was standing in the mud, inches from the dark water, and he wasn't alone. He swears, to this day, that he heard footsteps behind him, heavy, deliberate, crunching on the gravel. He tried to turn around, but his body wouldn't obey. He was paralyzed, a statue trapped in his own flesh. "Hey!" A voice shouted from the trail above. A jogger with a headlamp. The beam of light cut through the darkness, hitting Chris in the face, blinding him. The footsteps behind him stopped. There was a rustle in the bushes, a retreating sound, like an animal scurrying back into its den. The jogger ran down, grabbed Chris by the shoulder. "Man, are you okay? You're about to walk right in." Chris collapsed. His knees hit the mud, and he vomited. The spell was broken. When he went to the hospital the next day, the doctors told him he was just dehydrated and intoxicated. But Chris had only had 2 beers. 2. He knew his limit. He knew what drunk felt like. This was poison. He posted his story on Reddit a week later, and that's when the messages started pouring in. "This happened to me too. I woke up in the grass near the water with no memory. My brother didn't make it back." Chris realized he was part of a club that no one wanted to join. The survivors. The ones who got the roofie mint for the morgue. He escaped the fog that night, but he knows, deep down, that the footsteps he heard behind him weren't imaginary. Someone was guiding him to the water. Someone who was disappointed that their prey got away. Humans are creatures of habit, and so are predators. If you look at the timeline of the Rainey Street disappearances, a chilling rhythm begins to emerge. It's like a heartbeat, slow, irregular, but undeniably present. It rarely happens in the blazing heat of the Texas summer, when the streets are packed until 4 a.m. and the nights are suffocatingly warm. No, the water prefers the cold. Most of the vanishings occur between late autumn and early spring, when the air turns crisp, when the fog rolls off the Colorado River and blankets the hiking trails, and most importantly, when the crowds thin out early. Winter nights provide the perfect cover. A scream is swallowed by the wind. A splash is masked by the rain hitting the surface of the lake. And a man walking alone in a heavy coat looks like just another shadow in the dark. The profile of the victims is agonizingly specific. They are never women. They are never older men. They are almost always men between the ages of 21 and 35. Physically fit, often athletic, the kind of men who think they can handle themselves. The kind of men who don't look over their shoulder because they've never had a reason to be afraid of the dark. The predator, or the force, whatever haunts these waters, knows this arrogance. It uses it. The pattern of separation is the most critical key. In every single case, the story starts the same way. He just wanted to grab an Uber. He said he'd meet us at the next bar. His phone died. It's the moment the pack separates that the hunt begins. It's reminiscent of how wolves hunt in the wild. They don't attack the group. They wait. They watch from the perimeter. They wait for the straggler, the one who lags behind, the one who turns left when everyone else turns right. And the location is always the same deadly corridor, the stretch of path between the Rainey Street Bar District and the Holiday Inn. It's a route that Google Maps often suggests as a walking path. It looks short on a screen, but at 2 a.m., under the dim amber streetlights, it becomes a gauntlet. There are no cameras on certain stretches of that path. Blind spots, black holes in the digital surveillance of the city. And it is in these black holes that the men vanish. One moment they are tracked on CCTV, walking steadily. The next camera, 500 yards down the path, never sees them arrive. They simply evaporate in the space between. Is it a trap? Is someone lying in wait in the bushes with a syringe? Or is it something more psychological? A lure. A voice calling from the water's edge. The regularity of it is what terrifies the locals. You can almost feel it coming. A cold front blows in, a Friday night arrives, and the city holds its breath, wondering whose face will be on the news come Monday morning. The pattern is set. The trap is baited, and the winter nights are long. There is a war happening in Austin, but it isn't being fought with guns or bombs. It is a war of narratives, a war between the official story and the terrified whispers of the street. On one side stand the Austin Police Department. Their stance is firm, unwavering, and to the families of the victims, maddeningly cold. There is no serial killer, they say. There is no foul play. They point to the numbers. They pull out spreadsheets showing alcohol levels. They talk about the geography of Rainey Street, how the bars are dangerously close to the water's edge, how the trails are unlit and uneven. It is a tragedy of infrastructure and intoxication. The chief declares at every press conference. Men drink too much. They wander off. They fall in. To the police, Occam's razor applies. The simplest explanation is usually the correct one. Why invent a shadowy killer when gravity and vodka can do the job just as well? They warn the public against online hysteria. They call the rumors of the Rainey Street Ripper an urban legend born from grief and Reddit threads. But on the other side of the yellow tape, the public isn't buying it anymore. The people of Austin look at the photos of the victims. They see strong, healthy young men. They see the fence that separates the trail from the water, a fence that would be difficult to accidentally tumble over unless you were trying. How does a grown man just fall into a lake and forget how to stand up? They ask. Why are their wallets usually missing but their phones are left behind? Why are they found in areas of the lake where the current shouldn't have taken them? The panic is palpable. Facebook groups with thousands of members have sprung up, dedicated to tracking the cases. They organize citizen patrols, groups of volunteers walking the trails at night with flashlights, trying to do the job they feel the police won't. Bars have started handing out drink covers, little plastic lids to stop someone from slipping a pill into a beer. It's a small piece of plastic against a massive fear. The disconnect is growing. Every time the police say accident, the public hears cover up. Every time another body is pulled from the water, the trust fractures a little more. Is the city trying to protect its tourism industry? Rainey Street is a gold mine. A serial killer story would kill the nightlife faster than any noise ordinance. Is that why they refuse to connect the dots? Or are they right? Is the public just seeing monsters in the shadows because the truth, that life is fragile and random, is too scary to face? The friction is hot enough to start a fire. And in the middle of this shouting match between the badges and the bloggers, the killer, if he exists, is laughing. Because while everyone is arguing about whether he is real, he is free to hunt again. When the law fails, the lawless take over. In the digital age, investigations don't just happen in interrogation rooms with two-way mirrors. They happen in the glow of monitors, in the deep threads of 4chan, and the dedicated subreddits of true crime junkies. The Rainey Street Ripper Facebook group exploded overnight. 10,000 members, then 20,000. Finally, nearly 100,000 eyes watching the city. It became a digital panopticon. These weren't trained detectives. They were stay-at-home moms, insomniac students, retired mechanics, and board office workers. But they had something the police didn't: infinite time and an obsession borderlining on madness. They began to dissect the few scraps of CCTV footage released to the public like vultures picking a carcass clean. Every pixel was analyzed. A blurry shadow in the background of a video became a suspect in a trench coat. A passing white van became the abduction vehicle. One user, known only by the handle WatcherATX, claimed to have found the key. He posted a grainy screenshot from a street cam taken the night Jason disappeared. In the corner, barely visible, was a figure standing perfectly still by the trailhead entrance, holding what looked like a phone, or maybe a syringe. The internet went wild. "Enhance it," they screamed in the comments. People started applying filters, adjusting contrast, trying to pull a face out of the digital noise. Then the darker side of the vigilance emerged. Doxing. Someone identified a local bartender who worked at one of the last places the victims were seen. He was a quiet guy, maybe a little weird, maybe he frowned too much. That was enough for the mob. They found his address. They found his Instagram. They flooded his inbox with death threats. "We know what you did. Tell us where the bodies are." The man had to flee the city. The police later cleared him completely. He was innocent, but his life was torched by an internet wildfire that didn't care about due process, only retribution. But amidst the chaos and the ruined lives, the vigilantes did uncover things the police missed. It was a Reddit user who noticed the timing of the streetlights. They realized that on the nights of the disappearances, The streetlights on the specific path to the lake were often reported as malfunctioning or out. Was it a coincidence? Or was someone tampering with the city grid, creating a corridor of darkness to move unseen? The group started mapping the blind spots. They created a danger map of Austin that was far more detailed than anything the city provided. They marked where the fence was cut. They marked where the homeless encampments were, and which ones were hostile. They began to act as bait. Some of the braver, or more foolish, members started walking the path alone at 3 a.m., filming themselves, hoping to be attacked, hoping to catch the monster on a GoPro. It was a dangerous game. They were poking a sleeping bear with a stick. And one night, a live streamer named Night Owl caught something. He was walking the path, talking to his chat. "It's quiet tonight, guys. Too quiet." And then, in the audio of the stream, faint but distinct, came a sound. A whistle. A melodic, taunting whistle from the darkness of the trees. The streamer froze. "Did you guys hear that?" The chat exploded. "Run." He turned his camera toward the trees. The light beam cut through the brush, and for a single frame, something reflected the light. Not eyes, but glass, like the lens of a camera or a pair of spectacles, watching him back. The stream cut out. He survived, claimed his battery died, but the clips circulated for months. The whistle became the soundtrack of the nightmare. The vigilantes had proven one thing: someone was watching, and they weren't happy about the new audience. The city thought it had seen everything. It had seen the bodies. It had heard the rumors. It had watched the police dismiss the fears of a grieving community. But it wasn't until the disappearance of Marcus that the technology itself seemed to testify against the darkness. Marcus was a tech sector worker, careful, precise, the kind of guy who had location sharing turned on for 3 different friends. He disappeared on a Wednesday, a night when the Rainey Street district was quiet, almost empty. His friends realized he was gone within 20 minutes. They checked his location. His dot was stationary near the trailhead. Then it simply vanished. No low battery warning. No signal loss. Just deletion. The family demanded the footage from a newly installed private security camera on a condo construction site overlooking the path. The police were reluctant, but the pressure was too high. The footage was released, and what it showed, or rather, what it didn't show, broke the internet. At 2:14 a.m., Marcus enters the frame. He is walking normally. He stops to tie his shoe. He looks up, seemingly startled by a noise off camera. He stares into the darkness of the tree line. And then, the glitch happens. It isn't a normal cut. The video file corrupts. The pixels smear into a bleeding mess of green and purple artifacts. The timestamp jumps forward, skipping exactly 3 minutes. When the image stabilizes, Marcus is gone. But the internet sleuths didn't stop at the surface. They downloaded the raw file. They went frame by frame, slowing it down to milliseconds, and hidden inside the digital tear, in the split second before the camera reset, they found a single, terrifying frame. It was a ghost frame, an image imprinted on the sensor that shouldn't have been there. Standing just inches behind where Marcus had been kneeling was a shape. It wasn't human. It was too tall. Its limbs were too long, disjointed, like a spider unfolding. And where a face should have been, there's only a blur of white static. The skeptics scream pareidolia, the psychological phenomenon of seeing faces in random patterns. They said it was just a compression error, a digital artifact, but the audio told a different story. The camera had a microphone, and in that corrupted 3-minute gap, the audio didn't cut out completely. It recorded a low, humming frequency, a sound that audio engineers later analyzed and described as infrasound, a frequency below the range of human hearing, but one that causes nausea, dread, and paralysis in the human brain. Marcus didn't run. He couldn't run. He was hit with a sonic weapon or a natural frequency that froze him in place. The glitch wasn't an error. It was interference. Whatever took Marcus carried an energy field strong enough to scramble digital sensors. The predator wasn't just hiding in the dark. It was part of the static. And Marcus, he was never found. Not in the water. Not on the land. He was just deleted. To understand the killer, we must first understand the kill. Drowning is not a peaceful way to go. Despite the romantic poets calling it a watery sleep, it is a violent, chaotic battle for survival. Physiologically, when cold water hits the face, the mammalian dive reflex kicks in. The heart rate slows, blood shunts to the vital organs. But if you're panicked, if you're drugged, the body betrays you. Imagine the moment Jason or Marcus or any of them hit the water. The shock of the cold is like a physical blow. The gasp reflex forces them to inhale, but instead of air, they inhale the murky, bacteria-filled soup of the lake. The larynx spasms, sealing shut to protect the lungs. This is called dry drowning. You suffocate while holding your breath, staring up at the surface just inches away. But the psychology, that is where the true horror lies. Forensic psychologists studying these cases have noted a disturbing trend. The location of the bodies often suggests staging. They are found in eddies, quiet spots where the current shouldn't have taken them naturally. This implies the killer, or the abductor, watches. There is a specific type of sadism involved in drowning someone. It is not quick like a gunshot. It is not intimate like strangulation. It is detached. The killer uses the environment as the weapon. They hold the victim under, or they disable them and let gravity do the work. It creates a power dynamic of godlike control. I'm not killing you, the killer thinks. The water is killing you. I'm just watching nature take its course. This psychological profile points to someone who feels powerless in their daily life. Someone who needs to feel superior. Someone who maybe failed at being a protector and now has become a destroyer. And then there is the siren effect. Some psychologists theorize that the victims are lured not by force, but by a psychological trigger, a cry for help. Imagine walking down that dark path. You are drunk, happy, defenses down. You hear a voice from the water. Help me, please. A woman's voice. A child's. Your instinct is to be a hero. You step closer to the edge. You peer into the blackness. Where are you? You call out. And that is when the trap springs. It exploits the best part of human nature, empathy, to destroy the victim. The killer knows that these young men, these protectors, will come running if they think someone is drowning. They aren't falling in because they are clumsy. They are falling in because they're trying to save a ghost. And the only thing waiting for them in the dark water is the realization that they are the ones who need saving. Beneath the trendy bars and the glass condos of Austin lies a labyrinth, a city beneath the city. The storm drains, miles of concrete arteries designed to swallow the floodwaters of the Texas storms. But now, They seemed to be swallowing something else. 2 weeks after Marcus vanished, a group of urban explorers decided to map the tunnels that empty into Lady Bird Lake. They were looking for graffiti spots, hidden art. What they found was a nightmare. They entered through an outflow pipe near the Congress Avenue Bridge, wading through knee-deep muck. The air was stagnant, heavy with the smell of decay and rust. As they moved deeper, the sounds of the city above faded into a dull thrum. About half a mile in, they found a room. It was a wider section of the tunnel, a junction box. Someone had been living there. But this wasn't a typical homeless encampment. There was no trash, no chaotic piles of clothes. It was meticulously organized. A mattress sat on a pallet, raised above the water line. Next to it, a table made of cinder blocks, and on the table, a collection of items that made the explorers turn off their flashlights and hold their breath. A row of driver's licenses, 5 of them. They were lined up perfectly, like trophies. The faces on the plastic cards smiled back in the darkness. Young men, happy, alive, and next to the licenses, a jar. Inside the jar, floating in a clear liquid, was a watch, a silver chronograph, stopped at 2:14. The explorers didn't touch anything. They didn't stay to investigate. The primal brain took over, the lizard brain that screams, predator. They turned and ran, splashing through the sludge, scrambling back to the light of the surface. They went to the police anonymously. They sent the photos they took. The police raided the tunnel 6 hours later, but the room was empty. The mattress was gone. The licenses were gone. The jar was gone. The only thing left was a message scrawled on the concrete wall in fresh charcoal. "You are too loud." The tunnel dweller had heard them coming. He had watched them panic, and he had packed up his trophies and moved deeper into the labyrinth. The police dismissed it as a prank, a setup by kids trying to stroke the fires of the urban legend. But the explorers know what they saw. The licenses were real. The watch was real. And somewhere, deep under the feet of the unsuspecting partygoers on Rainey Street, someone is sitting in the dark, listening to the footsteps above, waiting for the next heavy rain to wash a new trophy down the drain. The most terrifying question isn't who is doing this. It is, are there more of them? Serial killers inspire a dark devotion. They have fans. They have students. And sometimes they have imitators. As the Rainey Street mystery deepened, criminologists began to notice subtle shifts in the modus operandi. The early victims, like Jason, were found with high levels of GHB. They were passive, quiet kills. But the recent ones, the bodies show signs of struggle, bruising on the wrists, scratches on the face. It's messy, angrier. This suggests 2 possibilities, neither of them good. Possibility 1, the killer is devolving. He is losing control. The calm, calculated psychopath is breaking down into a chaotic, rage-filled monster. He is getting sloppy, and sloppy killers get caught. But they also get more violent before the end. Possibility 2, the copycat. Is it possible that the original Rainey Street Ripper, if he existed, has inspired someone else? A disciple. Someone who read the Reddit threads, who studied the maps, and thought, I can do that too. There was a case last month. A young man named Tyler. He was pulled from the water alive. He fought back. He said a man tried to push him in. A man wearing a hoodie, face obscured. Tyler described the attacker as young, nervous, shaking. This doesn't fit the profile of the cold, calculated predator who built the trophy room in the tunnels. This sounds like an amateur, a wannabe. If there's a copycat, the city is in double the danger. You have the master, the silent ghost who drugs and drowns without a trace. And you have the apprentice, the violent, unpredictable storm who attacks with brute force. The police are now fighting a hydra. Cut off one head, and two more rise from the murky depths. And the most chilling thought, what if they are working together? What if the master is teaching the apprentice, passing down the trade secrets of the river? Here is the blind spot. Here is the injection site. Here is how you make them float. If this is a partnership, then the pattern will change again. It will evolve, and the next victim won't just be found in the water. They will be found with a message carved into their skin, a graduation present from the student to the teacher. The water of Ladybird Lake is calm today. The sun glitters on the surface like scattered diamonds, hiding the darkness that lies 10 feet below. Joggers run the path, tourists snap photos of the skyline, and the music on Rainey Street plays on, a never-ending loop of joy and forgetfulness. But the families don't forget. Jason's mother still visits the spot where he was found every Tuesday. She brings fresh flowers. She talks to the water. She asks it to give up its secrets. But the water only laps against the rocks, indifferent, silent. The case files sit in cold storage, gathering dust. Accidental drowning, undetermined, open but inactive. The official stamps of a system that has moved on, but the warnings remain. Scratched into bathroom stalls, whispered in dorm rooms, posted on digital forums. Don't walk alone. Watch your drink. Stay away from the water. The killer, or killers, are still out there. Maybe they moved on to a new city. Maybe they're dormant, waiting for the winter to return. Or maybe they are sitting in a bar on Rainey Street right now, watching you. They see you laughing with your friends. They see you check your watch. They see you pull out your phone to order a ride that will never come. They are the shadow in the corner, the glitch in the camera, the ripple in the water. So tonight, when you go out, when the lights are bright and the music is loud, remember the names of the lost. Remember Jason. Remember Marcus. Remember the ones who went into the dark and never came back. And if you find yourself alone, walking down a quiet path near the river's edge, and you hear a splash or a whistle from the trees, don't look back. Don't investigate. Just run. Because the water is always hungry, and the confession is far from over. This story isn't just a story. For many, it is a reality they wake up to every day. If you believe there is more to the Rainey Street drownings than simple accidents, hit that like button to spread the awareness. Subscribe to Midnight Confessions and turn on the bell. We dwell in the dark so you don't have to. Until next time, stay out of the water